Hello and welcome back to our next session, Policy Administration. So we cover today the topics of the slide where we're going to get going with policy administration. Keep in mind, we're going to tackle this only in this session from a very high level point of view. It's about that you have a basic understanding how the policy administration process works in Profida, how these things look like. We will go a bit more in detail in the dedicated sessions later, where we then tackle the details of a funeral policy, of a short-term domestic and commercial policy, of a medical policy, and so on. So in this session, we first want to get acquainted with the facility. We want to see where are things located, and then we're going to dive deeper into the dedicated product-specific sessions. Right, so let's use this opportunity to jump in, and we're here back at John Block's. His policies are located or accessible through his person record here on the policies menu. Profida is a multi-policies per person type of application, so you basically capture the insured or the owner once, and then you basically just link the policies to that person. The rules are then basically inherited from the products. So if we do maybe do a drawing, that might actually possibly be a good idea how this whole thing fits together. So we have here a person as an individual client, or we have an organization as a commercial client, right? So one of the two, and then here is basically the policy, and we can maybe put the product. So the product contains all the rules, and so that's our rule box, and where we then basically obtain everything, and then the person basically takes out a policy, and here a commercial policy or an employee benefit policy, and the policy basically inherits then the products. Let's just shade this a bit, and so inherits then the products rules. So basically this one could be the same product. Often it will not be the same product because the commercial product is usually different. So in this case, my drawing should have actually maybe drawn two products. So let's do that. Just move this down here. Okay, so here we've got the domestic product, usually a different one, and then that policy basically inherits then the rules. It's like a blueprint which is sort of imprinted in, or template which is imprinted into the policy, and it inherits then these kind of features, right? So that's just sort of from an understanding how the design basically works. Okay, so back to here, we've got our list of policies. So John Blocks has a variety. Here, for example, it's a short-term policy, and as we click on a policy, Profida temporarily highlights this. This happens in a lot of lists, so that you see what have you actually clicked, and you don't need to actually then click the second icon. And here in a new tab, we basically have then that policy. We're going to jump to that in a moment. I just want to open a variety. So this one was a short-term one. Here we've got a medical one, and I think for I'm not sure, do we have actually a funeral one on here? No, I think John Blocks doesn't have one. So let's go to a different client, let's go to Akbar. Abdul, he has a funeral plan, 2 different ones. Let's go to this one. Okay, so now we've got different kinds of policies to look at. So how do they look? The principles are actually always the same as if you compare these. The menus are sometimes a bit different. As you can see, if we jump, for example, from here, the menu is much shorter on this one because there's fewer options selected than on the other ones. We have then based on a type of policy, we have basically here different kinds of menus. The core data is always located here. We see here what kind of payment method this is. This is a debit order policy. Collection day is the first, so Profida supports any kind of collection day. It's basically the rules are set up on the product, and then these are the collection days you can select. Here's the related bank account naturally for debit order. The producer, Profida. In Profida we use the terminology producer, which is based on an international standard used in 13 countries worldwide. A producer is the person or company involved in producing the business, and that could be a broker, an agent, broker, agent, advisor. So anybody basically involved in producing business is called a producer, a special person organization type for that in Profida and then these entities have certain properties where they then you can also build commission hierarchies where, for example, you can then have a branch manager getting a super commission based on a branch's performance. You can have sub-agents working underneath a broker, and so on. So there's all kinds of setups available to be used. Then here we have the various relations. So that's basically here we have a beneficiary and an owner, and the insured relation on this policy sit in here. So this one is the funeral policy. There's different kinds of layouts and structures. So in this one, this started already a while ago in 2014. We see then here basically the core cover for the main client and the related premium. Then there's an optional dependent cover for an extra premium. The child cover is free, as well as the spouse cover. We see then here when the cover started, so there was a bit of waiting period in between of start and actual cover start date. There's also an end date where this cover then eventually ends. And so yeah, we also have actually an admin fee here. That was a once-off admin fee. So all kinds of external admin fees, poly fees, joining fees. So it depends on your product. Profida can cater for all of these. Then let's have a look at a short-term insurance policy. So the structure is a bit different, but the principles are the same, right? So we also have here basically the collection information. We have the start date. We have then here the relations, the involved people. So we have 2 drivers in here, an owner and a producer who produced the business. Then further down, we don't have now the insureds, because the insureds are actually the items, not the persons. And that is then located here in the various sections, and how these sections are labeled depends totally on your product. We basically have here just an example product. So if we zoom in, let's zoom into this motor section. So here we see then the vehicle details laid out, the name of these covers, and or fields in this case. I guess everybody uses here the same for these ones, but there's registration number. You know, somebody might want to write this out. Registration number. Other people want to have it abbreviated like here. So this is completely part of the setup, and also the sequence. These are all ordered. It's completely setup driven. So when we actually go in here, we can zoom into the product. So that's one needs to have permission to do that. Then one can actually see the setup behind the scenes. And so here I'm now in the section. I can then zoom into the coverages, and then behind these coverages then further rules defined, and additional rules are basically located in all these submenus. Right. Okay, so if there were various premium changes, then we see these here, and some insured changes, then we see these here in at the bottom, where we can see there were various renewals done, and the gray records basically they are the expired ones, and these ones are the current active ones. So as these change, basically they will be then expired. So in this one, because it's a training and demo database, we basically haven't done too much on this particular policy. So on a production policy, obviously they would look a little bit more up to date. Okay, so that's yeah. Then if there are any attachments, okay, we don't have any on this one. Let's see, we didn't do any renewals on this. Right, do we have claim? Yeah, we're going to go into the claim section anyway later. And before we go to the collections, let's quickly have a look at the medical policy. So that is structured similarly here like a short-term policy, but it has a few additional things. It has medical and underwriting related questions. It also has a plan here, which is an additional feature which can be utilized for various policies. We also have a permission group here, which means that the AWR brokers, they can actually access these kind of policies, and many other people who are not part of that permission group, they can't access that data segment. So Profida has the option that you can segment your data, and only certain parties of your organization or departments can actually see certain information, and other information is then simply not existing to them, although it's actually there. So then back to the medical questions. So here we see, yeah, medical questions are then here at the bottom. We don't have many in this example, but there could be endlessly many, which also hierarchically built on top. So if you ask the one question, then you basically get to ask another one based on the answer of the previous question, and then these questions can actually increase premiums, decrease premiums. They can create additional medical requirements, and eventually accept the policy, or reject the policy, or refer it for manual underwriting. But a human being needs to make a decision. The program can't then decide if it allows you to proceed. So then the sections work similar to the short-term ones, although here we don't create multiple items. We basically have the color structured within, like here on this day-to-day section we see then what we basically cover here on this particular medical section. Right, so now let's have a quick look into the collection information. So that here we have a brief overview of what we can actually, what we have collected already and what we will collect. So in this case, we see the next scheduled collection for 1st of July is our 2,100 Rand, and we have then past collections, and if there would be unpaid, then we would also see them on this page, and we would also see an unpaid counter. As you see the collection day, we see that this is actually collected by us. If it would be collected by credit intermediary, then this would actually also be listed here. Okay, so here in the collection history, then we have far more details about all these collections. And these are broken down on this page into the various items. Profida always calculates 2 months ahead of time, so we have a bit of preview what's basically coming our way, and we can also do some income planning. If we zoom into one of these collection records, this one, for example, belongs to one of the vehicles, then we can actually see here how Profida breaks this down. This obviously is purely done and based on our setup. So here we basically see there's various commissions from the different, from Sasria, third party, I think might be car hire, and the core commission. Then the underwriting, there's some extra VAT because Duncan McLeod is not VAT registered, and here he shares commission between him and AWR brokers who he works for, so they basically get a cut of his commission, and we mapped this split here so it can also be nicely put onto a commission statement. Here's our binder fee, and basically the everything what's paid out is sort of matching what's paid. Just to make this a little bit smaller so you can see this on the one screen. So here basically we have our incoming money, what we collected, and we're paying then that same amount then out, and that's how we basically then distribute this money. So that is a brief glance at some of the breakdowns and how this works behind the scenes, and how it can also be quite easily reconciled. And obviously Profida has easy ways to process unpaid. Usually you process these either automatically by Profida scanning the FTP folder of the bank, or by reading in manual in unpaid file which you get from your collection bureau or bank. But in the rare cases that it needs to be done manually, maybe the client phones in and you haven't received the file yet, and you want to quickly do an EFT, then or receive an EFT, then you can actually process the unpaid also manually via the button here. And refunds also, basically a quick click onto the refund button. You can then specify what type of refunds do you want, from which month and which collection you basically want the refund. And so there can also be detailed refunds per item. So there's all kinds of easy ways to just click and tick and off you go. So Profida's aim is always to make the user's administration and task as easy as possible. Receipting is obviously also important. Sometimes the client pays in case of an unpaid, or if it would be a cash receipted or EFT policy or an annual policy, then receipting can also be done per item or globally. Profida supports over receipting, under receipting, so basically the whole range. You can click this button here to see basically collection per month summarized. Before we saw sort of the per item collection, and now we see basically per month how the premium is allocated related. Okay, so let's go back to our slide and actually see what options we covered, and if we have actually some gaps. Let's have a brief look here. Okay, so let's see here that we have covered demonstration of the flexibility of the setup, maybe to some extent. Yeah, let's maybe go a little bit more into that point. Quickly switch over here. So we showed briefly that we had basically, yeah, let's do renaming of a section. So let's say here we have motor comprehensive, and in Profida we usually show the abbreviation. So you have sort of a Profida internal name, and then you've got a public external name which is longer and has basically no restrictions from a naming, because it can be duplicated because for marketing purposes, and externally you might have two products which are named the same externally, but internally you have actually different names and labels for that due to maybe historical purposes. So if we rename this internal section 6a to maybe vehicle with great cover, just to sort of demonstrate. That's obviously a simple change, but I just want to demonstrate the flexibility basically of the setup. So now we have basically here adjusted this, and we see then a new name reflected. And if we do, actually I could also do that with the public name. Let me do that, because then I can actually show you that on the policy schedule in a moment. Let's also do that here. Okay, so back to here, refresh this. Okay, right, so now we have actually this new change, and I want to use this opportunity then also to go to the policy schedule. Policy schedule can be sent automatically on policy activation or various other events, and obviously can also be emailed and previewed manually. So here, let's go. Policy schedule is also customizable to quite some extent. So if we want to email this here manually, Profida basically scans in everybody involved in this policy and then lists all the email addresses here, and we can just basically tick the people we want to actually then email this, and then we can actually just say email report, and then a cover, basically email will be written and the policy schedule will be attached to that. Guys, so let's preview this now to see how it looks. The policy schedule is a standard report to some extent, but it has quite a bit of customization options. So obviously here would be your logo, or even that entire top part here can be replaced with your image and with dynamic policy number, then injected and so on. So then some of these things are dynamic. They depend on a type of product or type of policy, and there's also a variety of policy schedules available, because we have also a Microsoft Word policy schedule, which then is more used on our employee benefits side, but highly flexible, obviously, because whatever you can do with Word, you can basically do in there, and then there are variables used, like you maybe know from Microsoft Mail Merge. So we have those, but these are Profida specific variables which you put into your Word documents, and then Profida fills in these variables with the real data. So it's a very powerful reporting facility. So this one is now a PDF report. There's and yeah, here obviously can be a scanned signature in. We haven't done this on this example here, and yeah, obviously also you can also remove the signature, remove this text, or change the text. So there's quite a bit of also here, for example, we have the broker's logo that could be displayed somewhere else or in another way, or additional broker information can be displayed, although the broker is also shown here, and also obviously at the end on a statutory notice. Right, so here this one can also be customized. For example, we have clients that don't have this on here, and if we look later in a moment at the funeral policy, then this one looks a little bit different because it dynamically adjusts itself, and we have also for the different lines of business slightly different and customized or adjusted policy schedules. Yeah, also all these text can be changed. Here we have our cover, as we specified it on the product. Yeah, display then various endorsements. So on the product, you can define your own endorsement library. You can also override endorsements or use template endorsements, which you inject on a policy with standard text, and then you override some of the text. So there's quite a variety of options as well available to make your life as easy as possible. So here we've got the disclosure notice then, and here we can also have the broker's logo, or we didn't put the broker's logo in here, how it looks like, but we put the underwriter's logo in here, the insurer's logo. So there's various options how you can set this up. And we'll obviously keep this always updated based on the latest regulatory requirements. Right. Okay. So now let's have a look at the funeral policy. Quickly run this there. You'll also notice that the policy schedules and the reports stay dynamic. They're basically different per product, so you can separately specify those. So if we look here, then we see that we have here, for example, the short-term quotation, yeah, and where's the policy schedule? Here, policy schedule short-term, and here as well. And here we don't have those, right? Because this is now funeral policy. We have here a policy schedule, life, funeral, and medical, which sort of be combined in this training database. And we have also some quotations which we can do on the long-term schedule. Yeah, Profida is also quotation geared, so you can also do quotations and then basically activate these to convert a quotation into a real policy. It's a process of about maybe 20 seconds or so, so that there's no recapturing necessary. Right, so let's run this. Let's go back to our funeral policy. Let's run this here. It looks similar. It has like slight different, see, if you compare the two, then you'll see there's slight differences, subtle differences on how this is structured. And some clients, they removed this area because oops, just draw this neatly. So this area here, because there's not really too much of information, and then they built this a bit differently with the variables and with the text. Yeah, and this one can also be put onto the previous page, so page breaks over, that's all setting up the policy schedule, can all be changed. Right, and then we have the disclosure notice here. Okay, so let's go back to our policy administration overview. And so we have now demonstrated a little bit of the flexibility of the setup and how we can actually change things, obviously to a very tiny extent, but there's just an overview session anyway. And the central place, the product, where basically all the settings, the claim rules, the limits for this policy, wordings, excesses, and whatever is applicable sits there. It also works kind of like a documentation, as well as obviously like a police to enforce the certain rules. The policy schedule, we spoke about that. Yeah, we have also options to first issue quotations, then activate those, and obviously you have also invoicing, for example, for annual policies, which can be exercised. The money collection process, we spoke a little bit about it. Let's maybe do a little more. Let's go to here our board and maybe move this to that side of it, and let's draw yeah, how the collection process in general works in Profida. So we saw some of the collection, we just saw a few collection records, but how's the principle? So Profida works with runs, and so you basically have a run for each process you want to send off. So like you want to send something off on 1st July 2020, and then you basically create a run for that, which is like a basket and or like a box, and you then put the stuff into the box all your collections on the policies. So this is a bulk process. So you have a button and a filter, and you say, yep, grab me these records. So quite straightforward process usually, and collections on policy A, and then we have collections policy B, and then those basically are put into the basket. And right, and then this is basically being sent off to the bank or collection bureau. Then the bank eventually sends back the unpaid file, and then the unpaid file is basically read back into the run, which then basically creates a policy, recollects and notifications to the policy holders, and lapses the policies based on various rules, or changes the policy to a different status as set up in the rules, like for example, into a suspended state instead of in a lapsed state, and then from there it can go into a lapsed state. So Profida supports either going straight away into a lapsed state after, for example, the consecutive unpaids, or if there's a strong reason like no authority to debit, but it could also go into a suspended state based on your rules as an intermediate state. So there's interesting setups and possibilities, so that you can actually build this together with us as closely as it works best for your business. Profida has also multiple policy statuses, and then based on a policy statuses, the policy progresses more to an active state or more to a proposed quotation or quality control state, and so on. Okay, let's go to here. So we've covered quite a few of these options here. Then money collections, bulk collections, yes, that's also supported. Like you use for employee benefit, where an employer pays for all the employees over, or for a group. Receipting, refunds, credit intermediaries. We have also special support for credit intermediaries. Some call these also bordereau payers, basically broker administrators who work for the UMA and insurer and collect on behalf of them. So there you need then bulk reconciliation facilities, either via import or via manual checking, but in such a way that you can just tick things off in a relatively optimized way. So we have there a few models. It depends on what your credit intermediaries can supply you. Yeah, so we talked also a bit about the money collection process, and let's talk about renewals and premium increases. Renewals and premium increases are an important part of every policy's life cycle, because eventually premiums are going up. Profida has their various rules. It has premium waivers in case of disability or death, which automatically can actually kick in for long-term insurance. It has for short-term, also every year usually policies are renewed and increased and changed. It has also vehicle register integrations there, where the renewal process can actually grab the latest minimum granted code and suggest that as the new sum insured. These renewal processes, if you work with credit intermediaries, they can then be sent to the credit intermediary for verification and acceptance or approval, and then I can send these back with notifications, modifications if required, and then you can import these back into Profida to affect the actual renewal. So it's done quite efficient, that as little as possible human intervention and as little as possible as duplication work is required. There's also automated renewals, like for example, an annual increase by 6% of the premium, and or the sum insured in addition. So those kind of premium freeze periods to protect certain policies from being increased for a certain period. There's quite some interesting options which we have created over the years. And keep in mind, we're doing this now since 20 years, so we have a lot of experience, and Profida has a very rich feature set for policy administration. Great, so I think this should have given you a good overview of what can be done, and we'll dive a little bit deeper into the detailed session then, and we can always, in addition, arrange an individual session after you are through these recordings and have more questions. Okay. Thank you for watching, and thank you for your interest in Profida.